This is our twice-a-year Antiquarian book fair, where we have about 60 dealers from all over the West Coast who come to exhibit and sell their rare and collectible books. The word antiquarian we use sort of to differentiate ourselves from what might be like a scholastic book fair at a school, because if we just say book fair, people don't necessarily know what it is. So the word antiquarian obviously means old, but what we sell here isn't necessarily old. A better definition might be old and collectible, or antiquarian and collectible, but there are many relatively modern books here for sale. Some of the specialties that dealers have: children's books, very popular; cookbooks are very popular; history of the western United States, cowboys, Indians, the gold rush, gold mining, very popular; military history is very popular; world travel, especially China and Japan, but all over early world travels, anything with maps of early explorers, say like Captain Cook, anything done by him is very popular. So we really run the gamut of subjects of human interest, and it depends really on the dealer. We're all individual businesses, so we all represent what we like or what we think is interesting or valuable. So each booth is really a reflection of the personality of that dealer to some extent. We have a lot of modern fiction sellers, and modern fiction doesn't necessarily mean 5 years old. It means novels from the 20th century typically up till now. So someone like Hemingway or Steinbeck, even though they're dead and their books are 50, 60 years old, would still be considered modern fiction. So there are some dealers that specialize in that kind of material.
I'm a dealer from Salt Lake City, Utah, so we do a lot of Utah Mormon, Western travels, explorations, first editions, books that I like. This is a fun, small book fair to do. I'm really here as much for the buying as the selling, and the camaraderie of getting to see old friends on a semi-regular basis. You know, being a bookseller, we're all recluses back home in our lairs, and this is the time of year when we get out on the book fair route. You know, it's when we get to see each other, and of course buy and sell from one another.
The internet has sort of knocked the wind out of the sails of a lot of the trade shows, because it used to be people would line up and pay lots of money to run into the fair and go look for stuff, but now the internet has made things seem less rare, so to speak. So it's harder to run a quality book fair because there's not as much urgency in the customer, where they think, well, I can look that book up on the internet, I don't need to go out there and look around. But we still have enough interesting material and varied dealers that we get a good enough crowd to keep the show going. But shows have gone out of business in many cities because they can't get enough dealers, because there aren't enough customers coming out, so the dealers aren't willing to pay to exhibit.
Bookselling has changed a lot in the last 20 years. The internet has changed the way people sell books. It's made a lot more books available to people. It's also resulted in the closing of a lot of bookstores. So whereas in the past, when you were a book dealer dealing in rare or used books, you could have a shop and have your customers come to you. Now often we have to come to our customers, and people put on book fairs where 30, 40, 50, 100 booksellers gather together, all with different specializations, different inventories, and people can come, and it can be kind of a one-day event or a two-day event where you go to a bookstore and see 60 different dealers. So I'm here trying to sell books, meet customers, meet my colleagues, looking for things to buy as well as to sell.
Many repeat customers. There are many customers that come to every show. Some look for children's books, some look for California history, some are only looking for old photographs or photo albums or postcards. So people that have very narrow collecting interests will come here because they know the dealer that's from some other town or state is going to be here, and that they've sold them things in the past.
I have a first edition book signed by Gene Tunney. Gene Tunney fought Jack Dempsey many years ago. If you're into sports or boxing, you're talking $2,500, okay? And I have some books that deal with Indian ethnology. Specific subject, quite expensive, okay? Then I have books like the Da Vinci for $10.
There are also very many people that come that buy high-end material, meaning roughly $1,000 and up, but $10,000, $15,000 books can sell here. But it's not typical, but also you could go to most booths and you wouldn't find a $10,000 book in many of them. So the higher-end dealers, they may sell only one book, but it'll be $15,000 so their show will be good, and someone else may sell 100 books for $10 and not make as much money. So the customers are as varied as the dealers, really, from all levels. Sell things for $2, $5, $40, $50. Probably the average sale, I'd say maybe in the $40 to $60 range if you averaged everything out. But some people, I sold postcards today for 20 postcards for $20, $1 a piece. But people have sold books for one book for $1,000 today. That's happened as well.
You were asking about The Cat in the Hat, which is a universal book that all of us know. And the question I've been asked over and over again today, why is that book $2,000? Well, it's because it's the first printing of the first edition of the book. And it has all of the points that say it was a first edition. It has its dust jacket on it. And any book in the 20th century issued with a dust jacket, particularly a children's book that was usually destroyed by young children reading the books, they don't have their dust jackets anymore. So that's why that copy is $2,000. And the one from your childhood is probably worth $5.
Is this, which is a printed book called Reed's Tramp. It was printed in Selma, Alabama in 1858, and it's by a fellow named John Reed, who was from Alabama, and in the late 1850s decided with a few of his friends to go across country again in search of a better life. This was because the United States had just bought a strip of land in southern Arizona. It's called the Gadsden Purchase, and it was being opened to settlement. So they wanted to see if they could find land in the Gadsden Purchase. So they went overland. They went through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. They went into Mexico. He wrote about all those experiences, and then they came to California and went to San Diego and up to San Francisco. So this is one of the most important narratives of overland travel at the time, and it's also a scarce book, a pretty rare book actually. It was printed in Selma, Alabama in 1858, not in a very large number to begin with, but a few years after this was printed, the Civil War began, and it's believed that a lot of these copies of this book were destroyed during the Civil War. You know, books are meant to last, but they don't always. Sometimes calamities happen like the Civil War, and paper burns easily, and if you wipe out a city, often paper goes with it. This is a really nice copy of the book. Usually you find it in pretty poor shape. So this is also something that's a pretty special book.
And if I may ask, how much would something like that cost?
This book is $21,500.
A good question. What will someone see here that they won't find elsewhere? Often, and again, this ties into the internet, dealers who find something that's rare and may not be listed on the internet, or even something that maybe it's worth $50 or $100, but it's not available on the internet, they won't list it on the internet because they know I'll bring it to a trade show, a book fair, because I've got the only one for sale, and the customers will have to come here. So it's a thing that I practice a lot. If I find little pamphlets or photographs that are unique, well, a photograph would be relatively unique. There may have been more than one made, but I won't advertise it on the internet. I'll bring it here. So the customers know if they come here and look around, they will see things that really aren't available anywhere else. whereas many books, a $10 children's book written 10 years ago will be readily available on the internet. But a strange pamphlet written by somebody about a small town in Northern California that they just published in their garage, you can't buy it on the internet. But a dealer with enough knowledge to know, well, this is a very interesting little thing, I'm going to bring it to the book show. So all of us are really, as dealers, looking for the things that nobody else has. My whole goal is to fill my booth up with as many items, photographs, books, pamphlets that nobody else has, because that makes them easier to sell, because nobody else has them.
I belong to the ABAA, the Antiquarian Booksellers Association of America. Many of us dealers exhibiting here today do. We have really some of the biggest book fairs in the world in New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Los Angeles. And they're very, very high-powered. They're very expensive. People from around the world come to them. By contrast, this is a folksy regional show. So you get a lot of newbie kind of dealers and collectors. That's why I've been asked about the Cat in the Hats, because people are just dumbfounded by a $2,000 price on the book. By contrast, over here, this is an 1849 California Gold Rush journal. It's a ship's log. A company from Rhode Island sailed from Boston around the Cape to the gold fields in San Francisco in 1849. And the asking price for this document is $50,000.
The cost for sellers is roughly $300 a booth, depending on accoutrements like glass display cases and things like that. Patrons, if they walk in, can pay $5, but I give all of the exhibitors unlimited free passes, so they can give a free pass to 100 or 500 people if they want to. Free passes are also available in antique stores and bookstores leading up to the show. I also put free passes in the local newspaper. So if someone wants to get in for free, it's not too hard to do, but if they don't mind just walking in and paying $5, which is the standard entry, many people do that as well. And believe it or not, there are a few dealers who get free passes, but they choose to pay the $5 just because they appreciate that we still have sort of this cultural event that's doing well and they want to support the show. So they refuse to use their free passes, even though I'll see them and say, go on in, and they say, no, I want to pay. So we get those every once in a while as well.
We continue our visit to Sacramento, California with Cheryl Ann Staub, whose book, Disaster and Triumph, highlights the women who helped shape the history of the capital city after the California Gold Rush.
Women in that era were, in fact, legally second-class citizens, and if the husband wanted to move to Oregon or California,